I want to thank the entire kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Been very helpful, unlike NATO. Saudi Arabia fought, Qatar fought, UAE fought, Bahrain fought, and Kuwait fought, even though they shot down 3 of our planes with the finest missiles.
Prior to the war getting started, we heard that Saudi Arabia did not want to get involved. They didn't want to get dragged into this. So Saudi Arabia said, United States, we are not going to allow you to use your military bases in our country to strike Iran. We just don't want to get dragged into it. So the Washington Post had reported on February 28th that push from Saudis, Israel helped move Trump to attack Iran. U.S. intelligence assessments saw no imminent threat, but regional allies argued now was the time to strike, and strike we did. And I don't think Trump is going to be happy with the decision he made. If not now, pretty soon he's going to realize what a huge disaster this was, a massive risk that will define his legacy. It turns out that Israel and Saudi Arabia had been engaging in a weeks-long campaign to urge the United States to strike Iran. So Saudi Arabia is very much part of this, according to 4 people familiar with the matter who spoke to the Washington Post. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman made multiple private phone calls to Trump over the past month, advocating a U.S. attack. Despite his public support for a diplomatic solution, the attack came. Despite U.S. intelligence assessments that Iran's forces were likely to pose an imminent threat to the U.S. mainland within the next decade. So not within a few weeks, not within a few days, 10 years.
This is the Prime Minister of Bahrain speaking in the UN Security Council right now on what's going on in Iran. I find it fascinating that the Arab countries that stand to risk the most by Donald Trump going in are standing with Trump because, as he just said, they've gotten to a point where they can't conduct business as usual because they have Iran constantly as a threat to their survival and their security.
Mohammed bin Salman has reportedly told Donald Trump that the United States should continue the war, not just fight, but destroy the Iranian regime and reshape the region. At the same time, the United Arab Emirates is also taking a strong position. Its ambassador has rejected the idea of a simple ceasefire. Instead, they want a final outcome, one that removes all of Iran's threats. Now here's the important shift. Countries like Saudi Arabia and the UAE may not have fully supported this war at the beginning, but now that it has started, they don't want Iran to come out stronger. And then there is Israel. Israel is still pushing for regime change or maximum weakening of Iran, and it is deeply concerned about any deal that looks like a compromise. Donald Trump does not want a long and messy war, because that would mean high oil prices, economic pressure, and even a possible recession. And normally, sending ground troops would make things worse. It would turn the conflict into a long war. But Trump seems to believe the opposite. He thinks that sending troops could deliver a quick, decisive blow, something strong enough to force Iran to accept his terms or allow the US to declare victory. Now, according to reports, there are 3 main ground operations being considered. Strike nuclear sites in Isfahan, a raid to capture Iran's enriched uranium from facilities in Isfahan. Capture Karg Island. Karg Island is Iran's main oil export center. Taking control of it would hit Iran's economy hard. Deploy troops along the coastline. To stop Iran's attacks on ships in the Strait of Hormuz, operations like Karg Island and Iran's coastal areas may sound strategic, but they come with serious risks. US forces take Karg Island. They will immediately be under constant Iranian attack. Missiles, drones, continuous pressure. And Iran has options. It could strike energy infrastructure across the Persian Gulf, target desalination plants, or even destroy its own oil facilities on Karg, just to make sure the US gains nothing.
Aside from Israel and the United States, there is another powerful force quietly pushing this war with Iran to continue. Not Russia, not China, but some of America's closest allies in Middle East. Why would Arab nations, many of whom are under threat, want the conflict to escalate? And what does it have to do with Donald Trump? and billions of dollars in business deal. This is true verdict. Relax and grab your coffee as we break it down. All credit to the Stitches video used in this documentary.
Aside from Israel and the United States, there's another party that wants to keep the war with Iran going. If you want to know who, just take a look at Trump's weekend plans. He'll be speaking at a Saudi-led investment conference in Miami at the request of this man, Mohammed bin Salman. The New York Times just reported this week that MBS has been calling Trump, urging him to continue the war, to keep up the pressure. But why would Trump be willing to do that? Well, on a surface level, Trump and MBS share some geopolitical goals. Saudi Arabia views Iran as an existential threat. The US military is the perfect tool to eliminate their biggest regional rival for good. This lines up with the goals of Trump and his billionaire Zionist donors like Miriam Adelson, who want to change the regime and weaken the Iranian state. But this geopolitical alignment isn't the whole story, not by a long shot. The second part of the answer is that over the last decade, any boundary that ever existed between the Saudi Public Investment Fund and the Trump family's private wealth has completely vanished. Let's start with Dar Global, a Saudi mega developer that has quietly become the Trump organization's most important international partner. In early 2026, Trump and Dar signed a $10 billion deal for a series of luxury hotels and golf clubs, all bearing the Trump brand name. So Dar Global builds the hotels and golf courses, Trump licenses his name, and the Saudi Public Investment Fund ultimately pays for everything. They're the owners. Who's in charge of the Public Investment Fund? MBS. It doesn't stop there. A huge part of the Trump family business is golf and golf courses, but when Trump left office, he was frozen out of the golf world. Lucky for them, LIV Golf was willing to throw them a lifeline. They made Trump resorts central to their new league, paying them to host high-profile tournaments. LIV Golf is owned and operated by the Saudi Public Investment Fund. So, thanks once again to MBS. The final connection we want to highlight for you is Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. After Trump left office, Kushner left his position as special Middle East envoy and started up a private equity firm, Affinity Partners, meant to make investments that capitalize on his many Middle East connections. And capitalize he has. Their biggest investor injected a staggering $2 billion into Affinity Partners in 2021, letting them collect millions yearly in management fees without returning any actual profits. That investor? You guessed it, the Saudi Public Investment Fund. I think this is the reason why Saudi Arabia has so much influence over the Trump administration, and why it matters that MBS is telling Trump to continue this war. It's a complex network of conflicts of interest, pay-to-play schemes, and outright bribes, with a very real cost to the American people.
How these Arab state GCC countries are participating, cooperating with the United States, because these helicopters should have they come from, I don't know, UAE, Kuwait, or some other countries in the Persian Gulf, in one of these Persian Gulf Arab states, or are they still using these countries? And to what extent they're using these countries? Because we had 2 drones coming to Iran from UAE, if I'm not mistaken. You're taking that.
Those 2 drones that you're referring to are UAE drones. In other words, they are directly involved militarily. The UAE is directly involved militarily. That is important. But all of the countries, they are providing the United States with their airspace, their territory, and their coast. All of them. HIMARS missiles are being fired at Iran from these countries, not even from within the bases that the United States control, from outside the bases. U.S. forces are stationed outside the bases. U.S. weapon systems are outside the bases. U.S. jets fly over these countries, they land in these countries, and in the case of the Emirates and Qatar and Saudi Arabia, they pay for this war. They help fund the war. So all of this is well known to the Iranians, and of course the helicopters they all land in these territories. Where else can they go? It's clear that these countries are all a part of the war effort. And every time they pretend they're neutral or they feign outrage when Iran retaliates, they're just insulting our intelligence. It's clear that they're in the camp of the Israelis and the Zionists and the Americans. They're proxies. They have no, they don't have much agency. Qatar can pretend that it's a bit different, but it's not. They're all in the same camp. They may not like each other that much. They may not be happy with the situation, but they have really. I mean, if these five regimes, if these five family dictatorships, told Americans today that okay, enough is enough. You have to leave. We're going to have great relations with you. We'll continue to have excellent economic ties and political ties, but no more military. We can't use our airspace. You can't use our territory. You can't have bases here. And you can't use the Persian Gulf on alongside our shores. The war would be over. Of course, Iran will still demand compensation, and it will receive it. And every day the war continues, the cost is going to be much more for these regimes. But the war would be over because the Americans cannot wage a war against Iran without using their territory. It's just not doable. So we are where we are. The war will continue. This war is not in the interest of the United States. Obviously, it's going to be catastrophic, but it's not in the interest of the Israeli regime. It may be in the interest of Netanyahu and his people, but it's not in the interest of the Israeli regime. The longer this war lasts, the more despised this regime will be by all those people across the world whose lives are going to become more difficult. Everyone will know who's behind the war. It is Zionism. It is the Zionists. It is Netanyahu. It is Trump. And that, just like the genocide in Gaza, is going to make the regime sink further and further and further.
Reports from major outlets suggest that Saudi Arabia and its allies are not pushing for peace, but for prayer. According to reports by the New York Times, Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has allegedly been in direct contact with Donald Trump, urging him to keep the war going against Iran. Why? Because for Saudi Arabia, Iran is not just a rival, it's an existential threat. Iran's influence stretches across the Middle East through province, militant, and strategic waterways like the Strait of Hormuz. For Gulf nations like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Bahrain, this war represents something bigger, a once-in-a-generation opportunity to cripple Iran's power permanently. Reports from the Associated Press indicate that officials from Saudi Arabia, UAE, Kuwait, and Bahrain have privately expressed that they do not want military action to end, at least not yet. Even after Iran struck US-linked infrastructure on their soil, they still want the prayer to continue. But geopolitical is not only part of the story. The deep question is, what does Trump gain from continuing this war? Enter Dark Global, a Saudi mega developer that has quietly become one of the Trump's organization's most important international partners. In early 2026, a $10 billion deal was signed for luxurious hotels and golf resorts carrying the Trump brand. Here is how it works. Dark Global built the properties. Trump licensed his name, and the funding, it comes from Saudi Arabia Public Investment Fund, controlled by Mohammed bin Salman. After leaving office, Trump faced isolation from the traditional Gulf world. Then came a lifeline, LIV Golf, backed by Saudi Arabia Public Investment Fund. LIV Golf turned Trump's own resources into premier tournament venues. Millions of dollars flowed in. The line between politics and personal business began to blur. But now, something has changed. According to the Wall Street Journal, Trump is signaling he may be ready to end the war, even if the Strait of Hormuz remain closed. That's a massive shift. Nearly 20% of global oil flow through this narrow waterway. Close it disturb economies worldwide. So why walking away now? Because reopen the strait could mean a long war, one that stretched beyond Trump's preferred timeline. Instead, the new strategy focused on weakening Iran's navy, destroying missile capability, targeting its nuclear program, and then stepping back. Experts warn this could be dangerous. Energy markets are global, and prolonging closure of the Strait of Hormuz means raising fuel prices, supply chain disruption, economic instability across continents. Yet, despite this risk, some Gulf nations still see the war as a historic opportunity. And when Trump looked at his ally for help, Europe reportedly declined. They see this war for what it is, not a defensive war, but a regional power struggle with global consequences. So here is the reality. This war isn't just about security, it's about power, it's about influence, and for some, it's about profit. The question is no longer who is fighting the war, but who is benefiting from it. What do you think? Are Gulf nations protecting themselves or pushing the war towards a bigger war? And should business tie influence decisions about war and peace? Drop your thoughts in the comment below. If you find this breakdown insightful, like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to Truth Verdict for more deep and undiluted analysis. Thanks for watching and supporting Truth Verdict. Your time, your voice, your curiosity matter. Stay informed, stay engaged, and we will see you in the next episode. Bye.